Yesterday's conspiracy theories, tomorrow's headlines. Most are still asleep and I ain't talking about no bedtime. The truth is not a Google search, you need to get your head right. The Greek goddess of illusion was called Media, and I'm not a coincidence theorist, I look for thread lines. Smashing every deadline, no longer smashing red wine. Though I can hear the bells chime, it feels like the end times. That probably should have been smashed on red wine, but the carnal mind is foolish. Obey and end up ghoulish. Don't get used by instinct, take control and learn to use it. Make a load of earnest music, earn a few quid, learn a few tricks. Sure, the truth is persecuted, this whole world is pure abusive. Know a bit about everything and everything about nothing. Figured out my noggin while you picture out shopping. You sit about watching while I dish it out, stop it. I don't mean to sound cocky, I'm not even proud of it. It's a second dish to me, just to be out honest. I don't even need to sound honest, never been about profit. Everything but out on it, you can bet your house on it. Doubt I'll be out for the count when the sounds, and I'm down for the beat, no beat down. I mean, how long's it been? Help me out. I've been the only one who's held me down. All in the mind, hell freeze now. Still sick with it, healthy how? Few bars down and the world freaked out. I don't reach out, I seek out to speak out. I'ma recount the reasons they beat out. I'm not the way, no way. I have seen the way. Speak, repeat, there's no way.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is the 509 Divine Pines Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Daniel Pena. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're about to enter a new year. Have no fear. Keep your energy high and bright. I am just going through the motion, I'll be honest. Took a little hit to my heart over the last few days, but I'm all right. Still chugging along. All right, man. So, people like to go ahead and talk about conspiracy theories. Remember, the CIA had created the term conspiracy theory after the JFK assassination. Then 60 years later, we learned the CIA actually killed JFK. So now all the other conspiracy theories that are being labeled conspiracy theories by the media, mass media, higher ups, elite, or anybody that thinks about coining everything a conspiracy theory. They might just be covering up the fact that these things are actually real, and they're just having to call them conspiracy theory for a little while until it dies down, and then they can go ahead and say, "Oh, yep, this is the truth. This is the truth." So, you know, let's go ahead and start off with the Twitter files, guys. This is by David Zweig. Part 1. The Twitter files: how Twitter rigged the COVID debate by censoring info that was true but inconvenient to the US government policy, by discrediting doctors and other experts who disagreed, by suppressing ordinary users, including sharing the CDC's own data. So far, the Twitter files have focused on evidence of Twitter's secret blacklist, how the companies function as kind of a subsidiary for the FBI, and how executives rewrote the platform's rules to accommodate their own political desires. What we have yet to cover is COVID. This reporting for the Free Press is one piece of that important story. The United States government pressured Twitter and other social media platforms to elevate certain content and suppress other content about COVID-19. Internal files at Twitter that I viewed while on assignment for the Free Press, it showed that both the Trump and Biden administrations directly pressed Twitter executives to moderate the platform's pandemic content according to their wishes. At the onset of the pandemic, according to meeting notes, the Trump administration was especially concerned about panic buying. They came looking for help from big tech companies about combating misinformation on runs to the grocery store. The Trump White House, specifically Michael Kratsios, led the Trump administration's calls for help from the tech companies to combat misinformation. Areas of focus including conspiracy theories around 5G, runs on grocery stores, and misinformation that could stoke panic buying and behaviors. Interesting. Now, because look, Trump is not the good guy. He is not the hero. He is not the knight in shining armor. So him talking, trying to cover these up, that should say something. Because yes, the 5G towers do have an effect on us. Learning how to prepare storable foods and having a surplus of food for the future is very important. Just a quick note. Number 7, it just wasn't Twitter. The meetings with the White House were also attended by Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and others. Twitter, alongside several other tech companies, including Google, Facebook, Microsoft, participated. Activities included a standing weekly call to share general trends and hosting a shared Microsoft Teams group. Some of the companies, not Twitter, gathered open source information from researchers. Our teams fed this information to the Twitter policy enforcement teams. When the Biden administration took over, one of their first meeting requests with Twitter executives was on COVID. The focus was on anti-vaxxer accounts, especially Alex Berenson. One of the first meeting requests from the White House was about COVID misinformation. Per a regular process, public policy took the meeting. Biden's staff focused on vaccines and high-profile anti-vaxxer accounts, including Alex Berenson. In the summer of 2021, President Biden paid social media companies and said social media companies were killing people for allowing vaccine misinformation. So he didn't pay. He just said, he was saying that these guys like Twitter were killing millions. Bullshit. Berenson was suspended hours after Biden's comment and kicked off the platform the following month. Berenson sued and then settled with Twitter. In the legal process, Twitter was compelled to release certain internal communications which showed direct White House pressure on the company to take action on Berenson. So here is the message from the White House. It says, overall, pretty good. They had one really tough question about Alex Berenson and why he hasn't been kicked off from the platform. Otherwise, their questions were pointed out but fair. And mercifully, we had answers. A December 2022 summary of meetings with the White House by Lauren Culbertson, Twitter's head of United States public policy, adds new evidence of the White House's pressure campaign and cements that it repeatedly attempted to directly influence the platform. Culberson wrote that the Biden team was very angry that Twitter had not been more aggressive in deplatforming multiple accounts. The Biden team was not satisfied with Twitter's enforcement approach. They wanted Twitter to do more and deplatform several accounts. Because of the dissatisfaction, we were asked to join several other calls. They were very angry in nature. Twitter executives did not fully capitulate to the Biden team's wishes. An extensive review of internal communications at the company revealed employees often debating moderation case in great detail and with more care than was shown by the government towards free speech. But Twitter did suppress views, many from doctors and scientific experts that conflicted with the official positions of the White House. As a result, legitimate findings and questions that would have expanded the public debate went missing. There were three serious problems with Twitter's process. First, much of the content moderation was conducted by bots trained on machine learning and AI, impressive in their engineering, yet still too crude for such nuanced work. Second, contractors in places like the Philippines also moderated content. They were given decision trees to aid in the processing, but tasking non experts to adjudicate tweets on complex topics like myocarditis and mask efficiency data was destined for a significant error rate. Third, most importantly, the buck stopped with higher level employees at Twitter who chose the inputs for the bots and decision trees and subjectively decided to escalate cases and suspensions. As it is with all people and institutions, there was individual and collective bias. With COVID, this bias bent heavily toward establishment dogmas. Inevitably, dissident yet legitimate content was labeled as misinformation, and the accounts of doctors and others were suspended both for tweeting opinions and demonstrably true information. Number 20 shows Exhibit A from Dr. Martin Kulldorff, an epidemiologist at Harvard Medical School, tweeted views at odds with U.S. public health authorities and the American left, a politician affiliation of nearly the entire staff of Twitter. No, thinking that everyone must be vaccinated is as scientifically flawed as thinking that nobody should. COVID vaccines are important for older, high risk people and their caretakers. Those with prior natural infection do not need it, nor children. Dr. Kuldoff, do you think younger age groups or people who already had the virus need to be vaccinated? I am not an anti vaxxer, but I am a vaccine hesitant about this one. It seems to be a religious mantra now that everyone must be vaccinated. Internal emails show an intent to action by moderators saying Kulldorff's tweet violated the company's COVID-19 misinformation policy and claimed he shared false information. So the email reads, sending a heads up that we will take action on Kulldorff's account for violating COVID-19 misinformation, specifically for sharing false information regarding the efficiency of the COVID-19 vaccines, which goes against CDC guidelines. But Kulldorff's statement was an expert's opinion, one which also happened to be in line with vaccine policies in numerous other countries. Yet it was deemed false information by Twitter moderators merely because it differed from CDC guidelines. After Twitter took action, Kulldorff's tweet was slapped with misleading label, and all replies and likes were shut off, throttling the tweet's ability to be seen and shared by many people and the ostensible core function of the platform. So it shows right here, all of his engagement just gets shut off. Feels like me. In my review of internal files, I found countless instances of tweets labeled as misleading or taken down entirely, sometimes triggering account suspension simply because they veered from CDC guidance or differed from establishment views. A tweet by Kelly KGA, a self-proclaimed public health fact checker with 18,000 followers, was flagged as misleading and replies and likes disabled, even though it displayed the CDC's own data. So they're just picking and choosing at that point, and like even if you're literally on point and just showing the CDC and their data, but also wisely talking about it in a very revealing manner, then they're just not gonna like it. So weird. So this they can talk about it, but we can't. But thankfully, Elon freed Twitter. I think. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see from here. 26 internal records show that a bot had flagged the tweet and that it received many tattles. That triggered a manual review by a human who, despite the tweet showing actual CDC data, nevertheless labeled it misleading. Tellingly, the tweet by Kelly KGA was labeled misleading was a reply to a tweet that contained actual misinformation. COVID has never been the leading cause of death from disease in children, yet that tweet remains on the platform and without a misleading label. Whether by humans or algorithms, content that was contrarian but true was still subjected to getting flagged or suppressed. This tweet was labeled misleading, even though the owner of the account was a physician and was referring to the results of a published study. So, dang, if you show the facts, they don't like it. It's so weird. I don't even get the point in that. There's actually there's no logic in it. Andrew Bostom, a Rhode Island physician, was permanently suspended from Twitter after receiving multiple strikes for misinformation. One of his strikes was for a tweet referring to the results from a peer-reviewed study on the mRNA vaccines. So here it is. So he got suspended for publishing a leak. Jesus Christ. A review of Twitter log files revealed that an internal audit conducted after Boston's attorney contacted Twitter found that only one of Boston's 5 violations were valid. The one Boston tweet found still to be in violation cited data that was legitimate but inconvenient to the public health establishment's narrative about the risk of flu versus COVID in children. Hmm. Interesting. Ah, look at this meme. Fauci with a Pinocchio nose. Ah, it's Pinocchio. Pinocchio just came out in Netflix. That was interesting. I was watching it. Interesting. This tweet was not only flagged by a bot, but its violation manually affirmed by the staff member and telling of both of the algorithm and human bias at play. Boston's account was suspended for months and was finally restored on Christmas Day. Another example of human bias ran amok was the reaction to this tweet by Trump. Many Trump tweets led to an extensive internal debates, and this one was no different. In Surreal Exchange, Jim Baker, at the time of Twitter's deputy general counsel, asked why telling people to not be afraid wasn't a violation of Twitter's COVID-19 policy. Yoel Roth, Twitter's former head of trust and safety, had to explain that optimism wasn't information. Remembering Kelly KGA with the CDC data tweet, Twitter's response to her is clarifying. We will prioritize review and labeling of content that could lead to increased exposure or transmission. Twitter made a decision via the political leanings of senior staff and government pressure that the public health authorities' approach to the pandemic, prioritizing medicalization over the other concerns, was the science. Information that challenged that view, such as showing harms of vaccines or that could be perceived as downplaying the risks of COVID, especially to children, was subject to moderation and even suppression, no matter what such views were correct and adopted broad. What might this pandemic and its aftermath have looked like if there had been a more open debate on Twitter and other social media platforms? Not to mention the mainstream press about the origins of COVID, about lockdowns, about the true risks of kids, and much more. So you see it. So the White House and Twitter were arguing about censoring health and COVID information, but it wasn't just one side of the government, it was both sides. Both sides were diligently shadow banning us for our talks. See, I was talking bad about 5G, and I was also talking bad about the COVID. So I'm like double flagged by both the Republicans and the Dems. Kind of makes a lot of sense now. Makes a whole lot of sense. All right, guys. So next up, Twitter files, and the other government agencies. Filed reports detailing close coordination between the FBI and Twitter and moderation of social media content. The Bureau issued a statement Wednesday. It didn't refute allegations. Instead, it decried conspiracy theorists publishing misinformation whose sole aim is to discredit the information and the agency. So remember, the CIA coined the term conspiracy theorists, and the FBI is just taking on that coin. Now, the CIA then 60 years later admitted that their conspiracy theories, or the conspiracy theories about all of why it originated in conspiracy theory, like the word, was based on JFK. And that all turned out to be true. And so the FBI calling things conspiracy theories and misinformation. You know what? I'll I'll bet 99% chance that the information that they're saying is a conspiracy is true. All right, guys, we're going to continue. They must think us unambitious if our sole aim is to discredit the FBI. After all, a whole range of government agencies discredited themselves in the Twitter files. Why stop with one? The files show that the FBI, acting as a doorman to a vast program of social media surveillance and censorship encompassing agencies across the federal government, from the State Department to the Pentagon to the CIA. The operation is far bigger than the reported 80 members of Foreign Influence Task Force, which also facilitates requests for a wide array of smaller actors, from local cops to media to state governments. Twitter had so much contact with other agencies that executives lost track. Holy shit. Is today the DOD and tomorrow the FBI? Is it the weekly call or the monthly meeting? It was dizzying. A chief end result was that thousands of official reports flowed from Twitter to all over through the FITF and the FBI's San Francisco field office. On June 29, 2020, San Francisco FBI agent Elvis Chan wrote to a pair of Twitter executives asking if he could invite an OGA to an upcoming conference. OGA, or other government agencies, can be an euphemism for CIA, according to a multiple former intelligence officials and contractors. Chuckles one, they think it's mysterious, but it's just conspicuous. Other government agency says the retired CIA officer Ray McGovern. It was an open secret at Twitter that one of the executives was an ex-CIA, which is why Chan referred to the executive's former employee. The first Twitter executive abandoned any pretense to stealth and emailed that the employee used to work for the CIA. So that is Elvis's question. Senior legal executive Stacy Cardile, whose alertness stood out among Twitter leaders, replied, "I know, and I thought my silence was understood." Cardile then passes on conference details to recently hired FBI lawyer Jim Baker. "I invited the FBI and the CIA virtually, and they will attend too," Cardile says to Baker. "No need for you to attend. The government was in constant contact, not just with Twitter, but with virtually every major tech firm." Interesting. Am I right? These included Facebook, Microsoft, Verizon, Reddit, and even Pinterest. Freaking A, they're hitting up Pinterest, bro. These guys are so sad. Industry players also held regularly meetings without government. So you can bet, like, celebrities, bro. Dang. They're definitely, I know, you know what? I know for a fact, because I seen like the huge push of celebrities saying the same exact line, the same exact thing. About 2 years ago, they were all like so cuck. It was so sad. One of the most common forums was a regular meeting of all the multi-agency foreign influence task forces, attended by spates of executives, FBI personnel, and nearly always one or two attendees marked OGA. Holy crap! Look at all these FBI agents from every major city and state. Oh my god. The FITF meetings agendas virtually always included or near the beginning an OGA briefing, usually about foreign matters. Hold that thought. Interesting. Despite its official remit being foreign influence, the FITF and the San Francisco FBI office became conduit for mountains of domestic moderation requests from state governments, even local police. Many requests arrive via teleporter, a one-way platform in which many communications were timed to vanish. Especially as the election approached in 2020, the FITF and FBI overwhelmed Twitter with requests, sending lists of hundreds of problem accounts. Oof. Email after email came from the San Francisco office heading into the election, often adorned with the Excel attachment. Here's the attachment. Our FBI Baltimore identified these Twitter handles and tweets, which appear to be providing misleading information on time, place, or manner of voting in the upcoming elections. We believe these may violate your terms of service and wanting to bring them to your attention. We would appreciate any feedback you have regarding this matter. Thanks. Wow. There were so many government requests, Twitter employees had to improvise a system for prioritizing, triaging them. Here's another email from Stacy Cardile. I want to reach out about election related escalations. The folks on this email represent the DC public policy. As you know, with the adoption of the United Escalation Tool and the depreciation of government selection escalations, we have been sending all election related requests directly to the Get Support for review. The folks on this email represent the DC public policy, legal, and comms teams working on elections. Generally, we are the ones escalating the high priority content, whether it is high profile or coming directly from governmental partners. Specifically, Pub Policy and I escalate reports from the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and state election officials. Specifically, Pub, oh man, well, or the Election Integrity Project ran by Alex Stamos. Interesting. Is also used to escalate reports. Comms escalates a lot of content tied to press inquiries about election issues. Is there some way we could figure out an accommodation to prioritize the reports we escalate, particularly in light of the depreciation of government election escalations? Although every tweet is valued, I believe it is likely that our reports are the most credible and most urgent, at least for the next week. Really appreciate any assistance or guidance you can provide. The FBI was clearly tailoring searches to Twitter policies. FBI complaints were almost always depicted somewhere as possible terms of service violations, even in the subject line. Twitter executives noted the FBI appeared to be assigning personnel to look for Twitter violations. They have some folks in Baltimore field office and at HQ that are just doing keyword searches for violations. This is probably the 10th request I've dealt with in the last 5 days. So the Twitter executives are getting pissed the fuck off that these FBI agents and CIA agents are like just being fucking Karens, this major snitches, major bitches, and they're like pointing out anybody who says a keyword. So if you say one wrong word, these dudes were, I'm not saying that they are anymore, but they were showing signs of just wanting to ban you instantly if you said one wrong word. You could like literally call them a Karen and they'll probably get mad at that. Fucking Karens. Next up, even ex FBI lawyer Jim Baker agreed. Odd that they are searching for violations of our policies. The New York FBI office even sent requests for the user IDs and handles of a long list of accounts named in a Daily Beast article. Senior executives say they are supportive and completely comfortable doing so. It seemed to strike no one as strange that a foreign influence task force was forwarding thousands of mostly domestic reports along with the DHS about the fringiest material. So here's a excerpt. Biden using scorecard and the hammer to steal another US presidential election, just like Obama and Biden did in 2012. Interesting. And that was written in 2020 by Mary Fanning. The hammer includes an exploit application known as Scorecard that is capable of hacking into elections and stealing the vote, according to CIA contractor turned whistleblower Dennis Montgomery. Dun, dun, dun. Man, Biden's been at this for a minute. I mean, for a long minute, too. That dude just don't get tired of this game. Moving on, foreign meddling has been the ostensible justification for expanded moderation since platforms like Twitter were dragged to the hill by the Senate in 2017. Yet behind the scenes, Twitter executives struggled against government claims of foreign interference supposedly occurring on their platform and others. The Twitter file shows executives under constant pressure to validate theories of foreign influence and unable to find any evidence for key assertions. Found no links to Russia, says one analyst, but suggests he could brainstorm to find a stronger connection. Fuck. So these dudes are leading them on false leads. So the CIA and FBI were like, yeah, go look over here. Go search for this. Go search for the interference. And then it wasn't even there. Didn't even exist. Extremely tenuous circumstantial chance of being related, says another. No real matches using the info, says former trust and safety chief Yoel Roth in another case, noting some links were clearly Russian, but another was a house rental in South Carolina. In another case, Roth concluded with a series of Venezuela pro Maduro accounts are unrelated to Russia's Internet Research Agency because they're too high volume. The Venezuelans were extremely high volume tweeters, pretty uncharacteristic of a lot of other IRA activity. In a key email, news at the State Department was making a wobbly public assertion of Russian influence led and executives, the same one with the OGA pass, to make a damning admission. Due to a lack of technical evidence on our own, it generally left it be. Waiting for more evidence, our window on that is closing, given that government partners are becoming more aggressive on attribution. So, here's a message. It says, yep, InfoBricks is an entity that we've been receiving previously notices on. Though it recollection serves, government partners have never been so specific to say that it was directly controlled by the GRU. BRICS is an inherently Russian dominated economic organization, so it was always likely that a website and Twitter account designated to promote it would be directed by the Kremlin. Due to a lack of technical evidence on our end, I've generally left it be, waiting for more evidence. I think that our window is closing, given that the government partners are becoming more aggressive on attribution and reporting on it. I'm going to go ahead with suspension and marking the domain as unsafe. Rebel Inside was new one for me. Even not sure what the goal was on the account could possibly be other than highlight unrest in other areas of the world besides Russia. I've already suspended it and marked its domain as unsafe. Translation more aggressive. Government partners had closed Twitter's window of independence. So these pushy government agencies, other government agencies ended up sharing intelligence through the FBI and FITF, not just with Twitter, but Yahoo, Twitch, Cloudflare, LinkedIn, and even Wikimedia. Fuck. So LinkedIn and Twitch and Yahoo, these dudes were using everything. Bet they hit up Nickelodeon and Kellogg too. Former CIA agent and whistleblower John Kiriakou believes he recognizes the formatting of these reports. Looks right on to me. What was cut off above was the originating CIA office and all the copied offices. Many people wonder if the internet platforms revolve direction from any intelligence agencies about moderation of foreign policy news stories. It appears Twitter did in some cases, by the way of the FBI. These reports are far more factually controversial than domestic counterparts. One Intel report lists accounts tied to Ukraine neo-Nazi propaganda. This includes assertions that Joe Biden helped orchestrate a coup-op in 2014 and put his son on board of the Burisma, which is true. It's all true. That's going to be for another day. 48. Another report asserts a list of accounts accusing the Biden administration of corruption in vaccine distribution are part of a Russian influence campaign. Interesting. The Biden administration was selling better places in the COVID-19 vaccine queue to other countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and therefore U.S. corruption was influencing the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. So, holy shit, they were purposely holding back the vaccines and screwing up the distribution. I don't know whether that be hindsight of them trying to save us or the more approachable idea would be that they just want to interrupt us more. Who knows? Other intelligence came in form of brief reports, followed by the long list of accounts simply deemed to be pro-Maduro, pro-Cuba, pro-Russia. This one batch had over 1,000 accounts marked for digital execution. Ugh. One report says a site documenting purported rights abuses committed by Ukrainians is directed by Russian agents. We assess that the tragedy of Donbass, a website documenting purported human rights abuses committed by the Ukrainians since 2014, is directed by the Russian General Intelligence. Intel about the shady origin of these accounts might be true, but so might at least some of the information in them about neo-Nazis, rights abuses in Donbass, even about our own government. Should we block such material? This is a difficult speech dilemma. Should the government be allowed to try to prevent Americans and others from seeing pro-Maduro or anti-Ukrainian accounts? Often Intel reports are just long lists of newspapers, tweets, or YouTube videos guilty of anti-Ukraine narratives. Sometimes, not always, Twitter and YouTube block the accounts, but now we know for sure what Roth meant by the Bureau and the extension of the IC. The line between misinformation and distorting propaganda is thin. Are we comfortable with so many companies receiving so many reports from a more aggressive government? The CIA has yet to comment on the nature of its relationship to tech companies like Twitter. Twitter had no input into anything I did or wrote. The searches were carried out by third parties, so what I saw could be limited. Interesting, guys. Am I right? Now, I personally knew about half of that. I was like telling people, like, hey, man, they're probably flagging us for saying these things exactly, and they have all these different little agencies doing yeah, and it just didn't seem like it was completely wanted by Twitter half the time from what I was noticing. So I kind of knew that there was some in-house fighting. I read the tea leaves. Oh, like that. All right, continuing on. Look, so we're just gonna watch this real quick. The FBI buried the Biden laptop since 2019. You want to watch a little video?
If you have a piece of crack cocaine,
Look, this is Joe Biden on the left and Hunter Biden on the right.
that I'm holding in my hand, $0.25. We passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice. Under our forfeiture statutes, the government can take everything you own, everything from your car to your house, your bank account, not merely what they confiscate in terms of the dollars from the transaction that you've just got caught engaging in. They can take everything. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail. Away from my mother, your husband, our families. So I want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street.
Shit. So we've seen what was on the Hunter Biden laptop. After a 13-month investigation, the Marco Polo report fully documents 459 violations of state and federal laws found on the Biden laptop, including 140 business-related crimes, 191 sex-related offenses, and 128 drug-related crimes. The Biden family made more than $30 million from officials linked to Chinese intelligence. Hunter, Jimmy, and Sarah Biden partnered with the spy chief of China, from Hunter's own words, and the CEFCNG to spread China's Belt and Road Initiative. Joe knew everything. Xi Jinping personally approved the Biden's family meetings with the CEFC chairman Ye Jianming. Hunter sent a text to Haley Biden saying that he was involved in brokering a deal with Vladimir Putin, and China had arrested CIA operatives in retaliation for the Department of Justice arresting his client, the chief of intelligence of China. If you are a Biden, you can collect $30 million from the Chinese government, work with the spy chief of China, broker a $9 billion oil and gas deal for Vladimir Putin, and the FBI will work with big tech companies to conceal your family's crimes. The Bidens made millions from Chinese oil, gas, and coal before Joe canceled American pipelines, banned drilling for oil and gas, and declared war on U.S. energy production. The real story is that the Biden family was getting rich from business with our enemies. They were selling access to the U.S. government, and Joe Biden was getting paid. Hunter text message saying, "Unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary." Marco Polo released a 630-page report with 2020 citations that fully document 459 crimes committed by the Biden family and their business associations. The FBI framed the real Donald Trump as a Russian agent, spied on him, and raided his home. The Department of Justice and the corporate media will continue to persecute Trump's family while they cover up the Biden laptop containing substantial evidence of Biden family's treasonous crimes. Oof. So short one, guys. Man, that was intense though. Because I mean, look at dude, like we've been saying that. Let's go ahead and watch this little one video, huh? How about this? We're gonna go ahead and run another video.
About my representation of the literally Dr. Patrick Coe, the fucking spy chief of China, who started the company that my partner, who was worth $323 billion, founded. It is now missing. The richest man in the world is missing. Who was my partner? He was missing since I last saw him in his $58 million apartment and signed a $4 billion deal to build the fucking largest fucking LNG port in the world. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about? China. My representation of the, literally, Dr. Patrick Coe, the fucking spy chief of China.
Yeah, guys, there's a lot more to talk about these insane politicians, and we're gonna uncover a lot more. So, this time for the news articles. The MIT Technology Review claims a startup says it's begun releasing particles into the atmosphere in an effort to tweak the climate. This is fucked up. Make sunsets is already attempting to earn revenue from geoengineering, a move likely to provoke widespread criticism. A startup claims it has launched weather balloons that may have released reflective sulfur particles into the stratosphere, potentially crossing a controversial barrier in the field of solar geoengineering. Geoengineering refers to deliberate effects to manipulate the climate by reflecting more sunlight back into space, mimicking a natural process that occurs in the aftermath of large volcanic eruptions. In theory, spraying sulfur and similar particles in sufficient quantities could potentially ease global warming. It's not technically difficult to release such compounds into the stratosphere, but scientists have mostly, though not entirely, refrained from carrying out even smaller scale outdoor experiments. But it's not clear that any have yet to inject materials into that specific layer of the atmosphere in the context of geoengineering related research. That's in part because it's highly controversial. Little is known about the real world effect of such deliberate interventions at large scales, but they could have dangerous side effects. The impacts could also be worse in some regions than others, which could provoke geopolitical conflicts. Some researchers who have long studied the technology are deeply troubled that the company, Make Sunsets, appears to have moved forward with the launches from inside of Mexico without any public engagement or scientific scrutiny. It's already attempted to sell cooling credits for future balloon flights that could carry larger payloads. Several researchers at MIT Technology Review spoke with the condemned effort to commercialize geoengineering at this early stage. Some potential investors and customers who have reviewed the company's proposals say that it's not a serious scientific effort or a credible business, but more of an attention grab designed to stir up controversy in the field. Luke Eisman, a co-founder and CEO of Make Sunsets, acknowledges that the effort is part entrepreneurial and part provocation and act of geoengineering activism. He hopes that by moving ahead in the controversial space, the startup will help drive the public debate and push forward a scientific field that has faced great difficulty carrying out small-scale field experiments and criticism. We joke, slash, not joke, that this is partly a company and partly a cult. So he's joking that this is partly a company and partly a cult. Interesting. That's very key because more than half the time they are a cult. Now, I don't know what this is going to turn out to be, but this doesn't sound well. Doesn't sound like a good move. Eisman, previously a director of hardware at Y Combinator, says he expects to be pilloried by both geoengineering critics and researchers in the field for taking such a step, and recognizes that he may make me look bad like the Bond villain is going to be helpful to certain groups. But he says climate change is such a grave threat and the world has moved so slowly to address the underlying problem that a more radical intervention is now required. It's morally wrong, in my opinion, for us not to be doing this. We need to act as quickly and safely as we can. But dedicated experts in the field think such efforts are wildly premature and could have the opposite effect from what Eisman expects. The current state of science is not good enough to either reject or to accept, let alone implement solar geoengineering, wrote Janice Pastor, executive director at the Carnegie Climate Governance Initiative. In an email, the initiative is calling for oversight of geoengineering and other climate altering technologies, whether by governments, international accords, or scientific bodies. To go ahead with implementation at this stage is a very bad idea, he added, comparing it to Chinese scientist He Jiankou's decision to use CRISPR to edit DNA of embryos while the scientific community was still debating the safety and ethics of such a step. Suchi Taliti, a scholar in residence at American University who is forming a nonprofit focus on governments and justice in solar and geoengineering, says Make Sunset's actions could be set back in the scientific field, reducing funding, dampening government support for trusted research, and accelerating calls to restrict studies for the rest of the geoengineering field. The company's behavior plays into long held fears that a rogue actor with no particular knowledge of atmospheric science or the implications of technology could unilaterally choose to geoengineer the climate without any kind of consensus around whether it's okay to do so and what the appropriate global average temperature should be. That's because it's relatively cheap and technically simple to do so, at least in a crude way. David Victor, a political scientist at the University of California, San Diego, warned that such a scenario more than a decade ago. A green finger, self-appointed protector of the planet, could force a lot of geoengineering on his own. he said, invoking the Goldfinger character from 1964 James Bond movie, best remembered for murdering a woman by painting her gold. Some observers were quick to draw parallels between Make Sunset and a decade-old incident in which an American entrepreneur reportedly poured 100 tons of iron sulfate into the ocean in an attempt to spawn a plankton bloom that could aid salmon populations and suck down carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Critics say it violated international restrictions on what is known as iron fertilization, which is part inspired by a growing number of commercial proposals to sell carbon credits for such work. Some believe it subsequently stunted research efforts in the field. Pastor and others stress that Make Sunset's efforts underscore the urgent need to establish broad-based oversight and clear rules for responsible research in geoengineering and help determine whether or under the conditions there should be a social license to move forward with experiments or beyond. As MIT Technology Review first reported, the Biden administration is developing a federal research plan that would help guide how scientists proceed with geoengineering studies. By Eisman's own description, the first two balloons launched were very rudimentary. He says they occurred in April, somewhere in the state of Baja California, months before Make Sunset was incorporated in October. Eisman says he pumped a few grams of sulfur dioxide into weather balloons and added that he estimated would be the right amount of helium to carry them into the atmosphere. He expected they would burst under pressure at the altitude and release the particles. It's not clear whether that happened, where the balloons ended up, and what impacts the particles had, because there was no monitoring equipment on board of the balloons. Eisman also acknowledges that they did not seek any approvals from government authorities or scientific agencies in Mexico or elsewhere before the first two launches. This was firmly in science project territory. Basically, it was to confirm that I could do it. A 2018 white paper raised the possibility that an environmental, humanitarian, or other type of group could use this simple balloon approach to carry out a distributed do-it-yourself geoengineering scheme. In future work, Make Sunset hopes to increase the sulfur payloads, add telemetry equipment, and other sensors, eventually move to reusable balloons and publish data following the launches. The company is already attempting to earn revenue from the cooling effects of future flights. It is offering to sell $10 cooling credits for releasing 1 gram of particle into the stratosphere, enough, it asserts, to offset the warming effect of 1 ton of carbon per year. What I want to do is create as much cooling as quickly as responsibly as I can over the rest of my life, frankly. Eisman says, adding later that they will deploy as much sulfur in 2023 as we can get our customers to pay us for. The company says it has raised $750,000 in funding from Boost VC and Pioneer Funding, among others, that its early investors have also been purchasing cooling credits. The venture firms didn't respond to inquiries from the MIT Technology Review before press time. Talati was highly critical of the company's scientific claims, stressing that no one can credibly sell credits that purport to represent such a specific per gram outcome, given vast uncertainty at this stage of research. What they're claiming to actually accomplish with such a credit is the entirety of what's uncertain right now about geoengineering. Kelly Wanzer, executive director of Silver Lining, a nonprofit that supports research efforts on climate risks and potential interventions like geoengineering, agreed. From a business perspective, reflective cooling effects and risk cannot be currently quantified in any meaningful way, making the offer a speculative form of junk credit that is unlikely to have value to climate credit markets. Taliti added that it's hypocritical for Make Sense to assert they're acting on humanitarian grounds while moving ahead without meaningfully engaging the public, including those who would be affected by their actions. They're violating the rights of communities to dictate their own future. David Keith, one of the world's leading experts on solar geoengineering, says that the amount of materials in question, less than 10 grams of sulfur per flight, doesn't represent any real environmental danger. A commercial flight can emit about 100 grams per minute, he points out. Keith and his colleagues at Harvard University have worked for years to move forward on a small-scale stratospheric experiment known as SCOPEX, which has been reportedly delayed. But he says he's troubled by any effort to privatize core geoengineering technologies, including patenting them or selling credits for the releases, because commercial development cannot produce the level of transparency and trust the world needs to make sensible decisions about deployment. As he wrote in an earlier blog post, Keith says a private company would have financial motives to oversell the benefits, to downplay the risks, and to continue selling its services even as the planet cools to lower than pre-industrial temperatures. Doing it as a startup is a terrible idea. For its part, the company says it's operating on the best modeling research available today, and that it will adjust its practices as it learns more and hopes to collaborate with nations and experts to guide these efforts as it scales up. We are convinced solar geoengineering is only feasible path to staying below 2 degrees Celsius of warming over pre-industrial levels, and we will work with the scientific community to deploy the life-saving technology as a tool as safely and quickly as possible, Eisman said. But critics stressed that the time to engage with experts and the public would have been before the company began injecting material into the stratosphere and selling credits. So, this is gonna start a lot more people. You remember, Bill Gates wanted to do nearly the same thing, kind of ish. He wanted to put reflective particles in the atmosphere and stratosphere. Well, someone already did it. They beat him to it, and it might be a quote. Interesting. So, next article. The southern hemisphere is stormier than the north. And I cannot. Oh, I can read it. Sweet. Okay, cool. A new study led by the University of Chicago climate scientists has revealed new theories about the relationship between storms and hemispheres. For centuries, sailors have understood that the southern hemisphere has been threatened by the most severe storms, with little to no scientific explanation behind it. Now we have fresh confirmation that the southern hemisphere is 24% stormier than the northern. Tiffany Shaw, climate scientist at the University of Chicago, has coined the world's first tangible explanation. The study cites ocean circulation and the large mountain ranges in the northern hemisphere as the dominant factors, further finding that this asymmetry has increased since the dawn of the satellite era in the 1980s. The findings concluded that this increase was consistent with climate change forecasts developed by physics-based models. You can't put the Earth in a jar, so instead we use climate models built on laws of physics and run experiments to test hypotheses. Testing topography or the forms of features on land surfaces. The study found that large mountain ranges interrupt airflow, thereby reducing storms. The northern hemisphere has a higher quantity of these mountain ranges. So when Shaw's study flattened all over the world, mountain ranges roughly half the difference in storminess between the two hemispheres disappeared. Ocean circulation was also tested. Varying processes between the two hemispheres create an energy imbalance. So water sinks in the Arctic, moving along the bottom of the ocean and eventually rising, carrying energy with it into Antarctica. The second part of the experiment removed this so-called conveyor belt system, eliminating the remaining half of the difference in storminess in the process. Notably, the study concluded with the storminess asymmetry has increased since the 1980s, with the southern hemisphere becoming increasingly stormier. By contrast, there's been little to no change in the northern hemisphere. So why did it take so long to answer this question? Weather and climate physics are relatively younger fields of study, as scientists only began to investigate this question mark after World War II. With these concrete answers, climate scientists will now be empowered to make vital predictions as climate change accelerates. By laying this foundation of understanding, we increase confidence in climate change predictions and thereby help society better prepare for the impacts of climate change. The stakes are high, and it's important to get the right answer for the right reason. Hey, that makes me think twice about heading down the hemisphere. I was thinking about it, going down to South America and just living there and getting away from all this drama and fake life that I live or that everyone lives. I don't really live a fake life, but it's like society is fake. So it's like we're living in a fake society here in America. Yeah, anyways, let's continue on. Climate change can be beaten. Why some scientists are hopeful. Jennifer Fitchett, associate professor of physical geography, School of Geography, Archaeology, and Environmental Studies, University of Witwatersrand, South Africa. People are starting to notice the weather and climate and to understand climate change better than ever before. It is very difficult for humans to feel the 1.1 Celsius post-industrial warming in Johannesburg. Our diurnal temperature range is often more than 20 degrees Celsius. From day to day, our maximum temperatures can differ by over 10 degrees Celsius. This makes climate change seem intangible. However, over the last few years, the public has become far more aware of the weather and climate, and the impacts of climate change are becoming more tangible, more easily observed, and more measured by the person on the street. We are noticing, for example, that jacarandas are flowering early than they used to. We are aware that floods are evidence of extreme climates and that extreme climate events are affecting Southern Africa more frequently than they used to. The tone of public discourse is starting to shift. Sometimes this leads to a single event not quite correctly being attributed to climate change, but it shows that people are aware and concerned about the climate future. This public awareness is a crucial first step in addressing climate change. I agree. If we all understand that, let's just say we do have an impact on the world, that is the first step. A collective conscious understanding of our impact in this universe, nature, and world. While it is very important to recognize the immense value of young climate change activists like Greta Thunberg, we often don't notice the many students across the world who are choosing to pursue degrees in fields related to climate change. The University of Witwatersrand launched a short course that was offered by over 5,000 incoming first-year students in 2022, and which was taught by a PhD student in climate change. This large cohort of students passionate about understanding climate science, avenues for adaptation, and innovations for mitigation is our future. Indeed. Hey, if you guys can teach your kids anything, teach them about the 5 elements and how to make technology out of that. 5 elements of wind, water, earth, fire, light. So again, wind technologies, water technologies, fire technologies, ground technologies, like what we can do with architecture or just stones and conductivity crystals, and light technology, because we now know that photosynthesis and light can be extracted and used as an energy source from plants, but we can also use light as a levitation. We can also use light as an energy source in its own raw essence through solar power. Look, man, there's a lot of technology that you can do with the 5 elements. See, that's actually something that I've been trying to get back into college for. Literally, I'm bored in life. I really, well, I mean, not really like super bored, but I want to go to college, man. It's like I need more fun. I need more. I need more. Patrick Omeha, Senior Research Fellow, College of Agriculture and Environment, Maker University of Uganda, says there is an urgent need for far-reaching change. Government action on climate change is slow, as their hands are often tied by stringent bureaucracy, big business, and the need to please all of the electorate. However, I am optimistic that climate action will happen because communities, businesses, and foundations around the world are seeing the need for action and doing their part. For example, in Uganda, solar panels are appearing everywhere. Large companies like Coca-Cola Africa, Nile Breweries, Unilever, and Nations Media Group are supporting efforts to restore natural ecosystems and putting the environment before profits. And for example, the Ivy Foundation in Canada is liquidating its entire endowment to promote climate action now. The funding from these companies is supporting many innovations and solutions, from refugee communities creating forests and deserts and innovators turning plastics into boats and building materials. They are finding ways to save energy and reduce the footprints of carbon emission. Africa is just awash with new ideas and initiatives that are turning environmental challenges into new sources of livelihoods and adapting to and mitigating the impacts of changing climate. If many small groups take action, it will make a real difference. Generally, if humans are the primary cause of globally warming climate, that means we can also be the architects of its undoing. I think people know that action needs to be urgently happening. So people from all walks of life will volunteer to help. I believe human nature overall is good and the degraded ecosystems are resilient to recovery given time and support. Desta Mebratu, Professor, Center for Sustainability Transition, Stellenbosch University, South Africa, fellow African Academy of Science, says the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, adopted in 2015, brought a new sense of optimism in terms of addressing the challenges associated with climate change. Unfortunately, the gap between pledges and commitments made by national governments and concrete actions on climate change continued to widen the subsequent years. This has made the possibility of limiting the planetary temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius more remote. Over the last couple of years, we have witnessed increasing engagement of leadership of non-state actors, including businesses, civil societies, and major groups such as youth groups and local communities. This has led to a plethora of initiatives and partnerships aimed at fast-tracking climate actions and has created a new sense of optimism. This, coupled with the increasing motivation and creativity displayed by youth groups across the world around climate action, gives me a great sense of hope about our collective future. Ultimately, however, it all depends on how fast national governments take concrete climate actions. Yimere Abe, research fellow of Center for International Environmental and Resource Policy at Tufts University in the United States, says the sixth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, published in 2022, described a gloomy future for life on planet Earth. Oof. The report detailed the irreversible impacts of change on ecosystems, human life, and biodiversity, along with the disproportionate impacts across regions, sectors, and communities. It called for urgent decisions by world leaders to minimize the adverse consequences. Disappointingly, the 27th Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change didn't agree to phase down all fossil fuels. Yet, there are still reasons to be hopeful for progress from COP. First, the cost of wind and solar technologies is plummeting. Technologies for carbon capture, utilization, storage, and transmission are rapidly progressing to foster transformation into low carbon market. Africa has an opportunity to use its massive renewable energy resources, harness its materials and metal sources to develop solar photovoltaic systems and wind turbines and address the barriers in the way of clean energy development. The turning point will be when fossil fuels become less efficient and more expensive than renewables. COP27 called for reforms in multilateral development banks. Reforms could address Africa's reputation of being riskier for climate investment by providing guarantees. Africa needs the U.S. to give them 2.8 trillion from 2020 to 2030, whereas the yearly climate finance flow is only 30 billion. COP27 also introduced a new holistic approach towards food and agriculture. The aim is to boost the finance for agricultural transformation and adaptation. This is another reason to be optimistic, since about 70% of the continent's population depends on agriculture. Finally, it's encouraging to see social movements, particularly among the youth, taking actions on climate change. These social movements, including indigenous peoples' alliances, have self-organized across all regions without discrimination of faith, race, color, age, gender, ideology, or education, and have become the guardians of the future. Hey, I love what's going on with our youth. I mean, I'm 29, but I'm still pretty youthful. You can see me. I look pretty youthful. I've been doing this for a minute, trying to be active in our society and active or at least taking better care of our world. See, I'm not really all for the science aspect of changing the climate through putting crap in the air and reflecting the sun's light and doing all this crazy crap. Nah, we can do it from like we can actually help nature instead of destroy nature. And yeah. Next, scientists confirm nuclear fusion breakthrough that could be the transformation for humanity. This, I guess, is previewed in 2004 Spider-Man 2, which I do remember watching. The United States Department of Energy announced what it called a major scientific breakthrough. The Department of Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm confirmed that researchers from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in California created what is called net energy gain for the first time recently. This is a major breakthrough in efforts to creating clean power and other scientific investment because no one's home will run on energy produced by fusion anytime soon. Oh, well, they're just saying, although no one's home will run on that. The appeal of nuclear fusion is an energy source that is created from carbon-free energy on a nearly limitless basis, helping move away from fossil fuel sources that can be bad for the environment and costly. It also doesn't create radioactive waste like traditional nuclear reactions do. The breakthrough announced this week is just a start. University of Rochester professor Ricardo Betti told the Associated Press, What has been achieved is similar to the earliest days of oil refining. Long before refined oil was ever used to run a car, you still don't have the engine, but you still don't have the tires. You can't say that you have a car. As for how fusion actually works, here's how the AP summarized it. Fusion works by pressing hydrogen atoms into each other with such force that they combine into helium, releasing enormous amounts of energy and heat. Celebrity scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson said on TV, when people think of nuclear energy, they often tend to think about nuclear fission, which was the energy source behind the two bombs that the United States dropped in Japan or World War II. For nuclear fusion, however, the problem continues to be the ability to safely control it. Tyson said, fusion without control creates a bomb, whereas controlled fusion can be throttled and directed where it is needed, in this case to create energy that is not harmful. In Spider-Man 2, Alfred Molina's Doc Ock created a fusion reactor that had the lofty goal of creating safe and secure renewable energy. The reactor became unstable and, well, quickly went bad. I'm not sure if I'm going to get flagged for, you know, I don't think I'm going to watch it. We've all watched Spider-Man 2, haven't we? We're all adults here. We all remember this guy, this fucking druggie. Look at him. Look at it. I'm just playing. If scientists and engineers can find a way to safely and efficiently create energy without nuclear fusion, or with nuclear fusion, it could be a transformation to society, Tyson said. It could be akin to the transition from horses to automobiles. So, like I've been saying, our whole dialectic of energy and technologies and the capacity and the capability of the technologies is skyrocketing. We're about to hit I think what they call it, the tier 2, tier 3 civilizations of space, where we're actually about, okay guys, for 70 years they're at that point where they were about to break into space, about to like change the world. But no, guess what? Like 2022 and beyond, we are going into space. We are breaking space. We are going through wormholes, creating dimensions, black holes, all this. Like, it is happening now. So, I mean, hypothetically, things might just like be more wild, things moving quicker. How about, let's just say that everything's going to keep on moving faster, and the polarity between sane and insane is going to be a lot stronger, meaning you're going to start seeing so much people be phased out of reality. So I had a talk with Graham Dunlop, right? And one of the things we had discussed is that, let's just say that this whole world is a simulation, or this universe can only contain so much people, or something along those lines, right? Where our universe has its own method of um what is it, survival of the fittest, meaning like once the universe or the world, earth or humanity evolves to a certain point, let's just say they evolve into a much smarter, faster, quicker, stronger, yada yada. We just hit a newer level of physiology, mentality, spirituality, right? And so the technology is going to be the same. Now it's speeding up with us. So everybody who's on the low end of technology and, let's just say, like spiritual vibes and mentality, intellectual capability, physical control and physical shaping of your own self, and how you can heal yourself and stuff. Like if you're on the lower end, then imaginably the universe is going to start phasing out the lower parts. It's just like it's always that way in nature, right? Uh the weakest link gets eaten and beaten, torn up by the universe. So we cannot be mistaking our presence on this world right now, that we need to take control and take very good care of yourself and your family, and speed up, because the world is speeding up, and you better speed up with it, brothers and sisters. I mean it. If you've seen me in the last few years, you know that I'm speeding up, fucking trying my ass off, because I know what's coming. and I'm trying to get you guys to a fucking sorry for the profanity. I'm trying to get you guys sped up a little bit. Look, I know my life isn't actually perfect, but there is some things that I am keying on and talking about that are very important, and we cannot be in denial. I can't even be in denial of the shit that I want to talk about, but or the stuff that I have to talk about. Like, you know, it feels like just I have to talk about these things more than the things I like actually do love, I, because I mean, legitimately, as a society, you better be like healing everybody around you, your family, your friends, pushing forward your city. If your community doesn't succeed, then 9 out of 10 times you don't succeed. You are only as great as your city, your society. Some cities collapse because their leadership sucks, and so bam, over 50 years, what was a poppin' city, what was a beautiful city, what was a beautiful place to live, just turned into shit because the leadership didn't take care. They didn't want to speed up. They didn't want to power us up, strengthen us, get us smarter, right? But I'm not a leader, but I try, and I just want to see everybody around me survive. Literally. That's a tangent, but hey, I love you guys. All right, back to Twitter. We're gonna take a break though.
Not new, what I do. I've been at it for a minute, pursuing, doing the damage. New, I would do everything that I said I would do. I gotta have it, so goddamn it, I'ma be everything I plan to be. Glad to see money coming my way, believe I'll achieve anything I put my mind to, or at least I try to. I'm avoiding my doom, manifesting my room. Meditate to ease the flow. Third eye open, see the golden energy. It can enter me, get me to feeling full. Forget my enemies, dead to me, yeah, I proceed to go to a new dimension. Gotta mention it's inside our soul. Go inside, fuck the outside. Never tell lies, show pride for belief. Gotta keep the range wide, so instead I just write another hit. Getting fried, rolling up, smoke another blunt for the good times. Bad times makes for the good rhymes, so it never matters. I just learned, no, I can't hide. Thank God for every second was birthed with the mind of an ancient soul who's just waiting for the next sign. I'm always watching, vision like a hawk, have 'em flocking. When I drop it, I'm talking, have 'em knocking. The knowledge that I'm dropping, I'm coming out the noggin, I'm logged in. That's the intuition, nothing wrong with doing what you feel is right. Everybody got this. Usually feel it in the night when I'm dropping knowledge. I never even needed any college, abolish people telling people what they want. I do not wish control over anybody, do it for the profit. That's the reason that they push it, do it from the cockpit. Cause they got the money, want the money on the mob shit. On the mob shit, but I know they ain't gon' make it, shit is poppin'. At the end of time, new age topics. Revolutionary crusade crossing, we go to a new space. Yeah, we enter in a new place. Louis V on my shoelace, rolling with the blue face. Yeah, I'm wondering what you chase. Just another dude caught up in the rat race. Moving my pace, lot of people looking at me sideways. I chase future preparations, gotta go through my phase till I'm ready to rearrange it. Happen on a daily basis, tripping oasis. When so many people that I can see through their faces and touch, so I'm reading minds, feel like I'm evasive, persuasive. Cause I feel the vibe, manipulation, I'm patient. Yeah, I feel the vibe, then work to change it. Manifestation, blessings is what I'm chasing. Quantum physics, I'm about to take the time and rearrange it. I play with reality, can't feel like I'm basic. Most people shut it down, don't wanna embrace it. Replacing knowledge.
All right, guys, I am back. So look at this. Look at this crack. CIA is behind spate of explosions in Russia. U.S. Army Special Ops Veteran claims intelligence agency and NATO ally are conducting sabotage missions. Hey, man, we knew it. Yeah, like, these dudes are going around the whole world and creating havoc and then just like acting very mature about it, drama. This is definitely a big piece of news from the Daily Mail. And, we see this all the time. We hear about it all the time in the movies and stories from, people that have been through the, the business. Continuing forward. Experts puzzled by why Haiti was one of the lowest COVID-19 death rates in the world despite administering 0 vaccine doses. Oh, you mean because these vaccines are like depopulation agendas, the depopulation tools? Look, man, I really pray for everybody, including myself, my family, my friends. What we just went through over the last 4 years is a it's probably the biggest sin to humanity. The biggest betrayal and assassination of humanity all at once. Like they impacted billions. Like this wasn't just like going after Christians. Like this was attacking the soul of humans across the world. Billions of people are affected. And I really just want you guys healthy, man. I I I, I I had vaccination damage when I went to the military and National Guard, and it sucked, man. I was hurting for a couple of years. I'm glad I made it out. Hey, anyways, continuing forward. Remember this? Twitter is like a piece of shit, right? So beyond Elon buying it, one of the things was he was clearing out CP. And wow, look at this. Former Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal has been arrested for CP after a tip-off from Elon Musk. That is in the Vancouver Times. So, what these former CEOs were doing, they were actually monitoring it and saving it for a collective database. Fucking piece of shits, burning hell. Continuing forward. Sorry about the junk in this picture. It came off TikTok. So here's the picture. It says, since 2015, the FBI propagated the Russian collusion hoax to hurt the Trump administration, manufactured the Whitmer kidnapping case, and blamed it on Trump before the election, helped Biden's presidential campaign by burying Hunter's illegal activities, misclassified domestic extremism cases to support the Biden narrative, targeted conservative parents who protested pandemic policies on school boards, placed at least 2 informants at the Capitol on January 6 who participated in the riot, raided Trump's home to find anything that could prevent him from running in the 2024 election. They also intervened in social medias and became the biggest Karens in the world. Moving forward, study says an AI behind Chat GPT could help spot early signs of Alzheimer's disease. So I actually harped on this, how well AI can be beneficial to humanity, and yes, AI can be a very beneficial to helping understand health effects, and it could be a very good tool for the medical establishment. Look, I'm not against technology. I'm against the misuse of technology. This sounds like the right use of technology. So I am for it, man. This is pretty cool. The current practice for diagnosing Alzheimer's disease typically involves a medical history review and lengthy set of physical and neurological evaluations. We know from ongoing research that cognitive effects of Alzheimer's disease can manifest themselves in language production. The most commonly used for tests for early detections of Alzheimer's look at acoustic features such as pausing, articulation, and vocal quality, in addition to tests of cognitions. We believe the improvement of natural language processing programs provided to another path to support early identification of Alzheimer's. GPT, the AI, officially the third generation of OpenAI's general pre-trained transformer, uses a deep learning algorithm trained by processing vast swaths of information from the internet within a particular focus on how words are used and how language is constructed. This training allows it to produce a human-like response to any task that involves language, from responses to simple questions to writing poems and essays. GPT-3 is particularly good at zero data learning, meaning it can respond to questions that would normally require external knowledge that has been provided. For example, asking the program to write cliff notes of a text would normally require an explanation that this means a summary. But GPT-3 has gone through enough training to understand the reference and adapt itself to produce the expected response. GPT-3 system approach to language and analysis and production makes it a promising candidate for identifying the subtle speech characteristics that may predict the onset of dementia. Training GPT-3 with a massive data set of interviews, some of which are Alzheimer patients, would provide it with information it needs to extract speech patterns that could be applied to identifying markers of future patients. The researchers tested this theory by training the program with a set of transcripts from a portion of a data set of speech recordings compiled with the support of National Institutes of Health, specifically for the purpose of testing natural language processing programs' ability to detect dementia. The program captured meaningful characteristics of the word use, sentence structure, and meaning from the text to produce what researchers call an embedding, a characteristic profile of Alzheimer's speech. They then used the embedded to retrain the program, turning it into Alzheimer's screening machine. They then tested it to ask the program to review dozens of transcripts from the data set and decide whether or not each one was produced by someone who is developing Alzheimer's. Running two of the top natural language processing programs through the same paces, the group found that GPT-3 performed better than both in terms of accurately identifying Alzheimer's examples, identifying non-Alzheimer's examples, and with fewer missed cases than both programs. The second test used GPT-3's textual analysis to predict the score of various patterns from the dataset on a common test for predicting the severity of dementia called the mini mental state exam. The team then compared GPT-3's prediction accuracy to that of an analysis using only the acoustic feature of the recording, such as pauses, voice strength, and slurring, to predict the MMSC score. GPT-3 proved to be almost 20% more accurate in predicting patients' MMSC score. Our results demonstrate that the text embedded generated by GPT-3 can reliably use not only to detect individuals with Alzheimer's disease from healthy controls, but also infer the subject's cognitive testing scores, both solely based on speech data. We further show that text embedding outperforms a conventional acoustic feature-based approach and even performs competitively with fine-tuned models. These results altogether suggest that GPT-3-based text embedding is a promised approach for AD assessment and has potential to improve early diagnosis of dementia. To build on these promising results, the researchers are planning to develop a web application that could be used at home or in a doctor's office as a pre-screening tool. Our proof of concept shows that this could be a simple, accessible, and adequately sensitive tool for community-based testing. This could be very useful for early screening and risk assessment before a clinical diagnosis. Hey, that is great. Look, I'm all for it, man. I'm all for this. This is a very interesting one. The National Eye Institute from National Institute of Health. Researchers use 3D bioprinting to create eye tissue. Scientists use patient stem cells and 3D bioprinting to produce eye tissue that will advance understanding of the mechanisms of blinding diseases. The researching team from the National Eye Institute, part of the National Institute of Health, printed a combination of cells that form the outer blood retina barrier, eye tissue that supports the retina's light sensitivity photoreceptors. The technique provides a theoretically unlimited supply of patient-derived tissue to study degenerative retinal diseases such as age-related macular degeneration. Scientists use patient stem cells and 3D bioprinting to produce eye tissue that will advance understanding of the mechanisms of blinding diseases. We know that AMD starts in the outer blood retina barrier. However, mechanisms of AMD initiation and progression to advanced dry and wet stages remain poorly understood due to lack of physiologically relevant human models. The outer blood retina barrier consists of the retinal pigment epithelium, separating the Bruch's membrane from the blood vessel-rich chiara capillaris. Bruch's membrane regulates the exchange of nutrients and waste between the chiara capillaris and the RPE. In AMD, lipoprotein deposits called drusen form outside Bruch's membrane, impeding its function. Over the time, the RPE, retinal pigment epithelium, break down, leading to the photoreceptor degeneration and vision loss. But Barty and colleagues combined three mature choroidal cell types in hydrogel: pericytes and endothelial cells, which are key components of capillaries, and fibroblasts, which give tissue structure. The scientists then printed the gel on a biodegradable scaffold. Within days, the cells began to mature into dense capillary network. On day 9, the scientists seeded retinal pigment epithelial cells on the flip side of the scaffold. The printed tissue reached full maturity in day 42. Tissue analyzes and genetic and functional testing showed that the printed tissue looked to behave similarly to native outer blood retina barrier. Under induced stress, printed tissue exhibited patterns of early AMD, such as drusen deposits underneath the RPE, and progression to late stage dry AMD, where tissue degradation was observed. Low oxygen induced wet AMD like appearances, with hyperproliferation of the choroidal vessels that migrated into the sub RPE zone. Anti-VEGF drugs used to treat AMD suppressed this overall growth and migration and restored tissue morphology. By printing cells, we're facilitating the exchange of cellular cues that are necessary for former outer blood retina barrier anatomy. For example, presence of RPE cells induce gene expression changes in fibroblasts that contribute to the formation of Bruch's membrane, something that was suggested many years ago but wasn't proved until our model. Among the technical challenges of Barty's team addressed were generating a suitable biodegradable scaffold and achieving a consistent printing pattern through the development of a temperature-sensitive hydrogel that achieved distinct rows when cold but that dissolved when the gel warmed. Good row consistency enabled a more precise system of quantifying tissue structures. They also optimized cell structure ratio of pericytes, endothelial cells, and fibroblasts. Co-author Mark Furrer, PhD director of the 3D Tissue Bioprinting Laboratory of NIH National Center for Advanced Translational Sciences, and his team provided expertise for the biofabrication of the outer blood retina barrier tissues in a well, along the analytical measurements of the enabled drug screening. Our collaborative efforts have resulted in very relevant retina tissue models of degenerative eye tissues diseases. Such tissue models have many potential uses in translational applications, including therapeutic developments. Barty and collaborators are using printed blood retina barrier models to study AMD, and they are experimenting with additional cell types to the printing process, such as immune cells, to better recapitulate native tissue. Ooh, so this is pretty sick, man. Look, everything is about to just get better. We're gonna start healing so much better. The whole world is gonna be able to heal. Eh, it's gonna be amazing. You know what else is amazing? Right here, local Oregon State archaeologists uncovered the oldest known projectile points in Americas. The Oregon State University archaeologists have uncovered projectile points in Idaho that are thousands of years older than any previously found in the Americas, helping to fill in the history of how early humans crafted and used stone weapons. The 13 full and fragmentary projectile points, razor sharp and ranging from about half an inch to 2 inches long, are from roughly 700 years ago, or 15,700 years ago, according to the carbon-14 dating. That's about 3,000 years older than the Clovis fluted points found throughout North America, and 2,300 years older than the previously points found at the same Cooper's Ferry site along the Salmon River in present-day Idaho. From a scientific point of view, these discoveries add very important details about what the archaeological record of the earliest peoples of the Americas looked like. We think that people were here in the Americas 16,000 years ago. It's another thing to measure by finding well-made artifacts they left behind. So that is something very true. Speculation is that we have been on Earth for millions of years. Look, I know that's 16,000 years ago, but that is a step because other people are claiming that they have archaeological evidence down in South America of some monuments and structures like 80,000, 90,000 years ago. And this is just a start. See, Sumerian kings list can be referenced to 450, 460,000 years ago. Previously, Davis and other researchers working on Cooper's Ferry site had found simple flakes and pieces of bone that indicated human presence about 16,000 years ago, but the discovery of projectile points reveals new insights into the first Americans expressing complex thoughts through technology at the time. The Salmon River site where the points were found is a traditional Nez Perce land, known to the tribe as the ancient valley of Nipehi. Interesting. So, let's go to Nipehi, guys. Oh! The land is currently held in public ownership by the Federal Bureau of Land Management. The points are revelatory not in just their age, but in similarity to projectile points in Hokkaido, Japan, dating 16th or 20,000 years ago, Davis said. Their presence in Idaho adds more detail to the hypothesis that there are early genetic and cultural connections between the Ice Age people of Northeast Asia and North America. The earliest peoples of North America possessed cultural knowledge that they used to survive and thrive over time. Some of this knowledge can be seen by the way people made stones, such as the projectile points found at the Cooper's Ferry site. By comparing these points with other sites of the same age and older, we can infer the spatial extents of social networks where this technological knowledge was shared between peoples. These slender projectile points are characterized by two distinct ends, one sharper and one stemmed, as well as symmetrical beveled shape if looked at head on. They were likely attached to darts rather than arrows or spears, and despite the small size, they were deadly weapons. There's an assumption that early projectile points had to be big to kill large game. However, smaller projectile points mounted on darts will penetrate deeply and cause tremendous internal damage. He said, "You can hunt any animal we know about with weapons like this." The discoveries add to the emerging picture of early human life in Pacific Northwest, Davis said. Finding a site where people made pits and stored complete and broken projectiles points nearly 16,000 years ago gives us valuable details about the lives of the region's earliest inhabitants. The newly discovered pits are part of the larger Cooper's Ferry's record, where Davis and colleagues had previously reported 14,200-year-old fire pits and a food processing area containing the remains of an extinct horse. All told, they found and mapped more than 65,000 items, recording their locations to the millimeter for precise documentation. The project points were uncovered over multiple summers between 2012 and 2017, with work supported by a funding partnership between OSU and the BLM. All excavation work has been completed and the site is now covered. The BLM installed interpretive panels and a kiosk at the site to describe the work. Davis has been studying the Cooper Ferry site since the 1990s when he was the archaeologist with BLM. Now he partners with BLM to undergraduate and graduate students from the OSU to work the site. In the summer, the team also works closely with the Nez Perce tribes to provide field opportunities for tribal youth and to communicate all findings. Interesting, guys. That's close to home. I love hearing this because we all watch Ancient Apocalypse with Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, and it was just on Netflix, right? And they talk a lot about the Pacific Northwest being home and remnant to some of the oldest geological and archaeological evidence from the last ice age. Interesting. What else is interesting? Designing with DNA. Software lets researchers create tiny round objects out of DNA. Yeah, you heard that right. Nanoscale tiny structures emerging from research labs at Duke University and Arizona State University is making it easy to imagine you're browsing a catalog of the world's smallest pottery. Instead of making them from wood or clay, the researchers designed these objects out of thread-like molecules of DNA, bent and folded into complex three-dimensional objects with nanometer precision. These creations demonstrate the possibilities of new open-source software program. The software lets users take drawings or digital models of rounded shapes and turn them into 3D structures made of DNA. The DNA nanostructures were assembled and imaged by co-authors Raghu Pradeep Narhayan and Abhay Prasad in Professor Hao Yan's lab at Arizona State. Each tiny hollow object is no more than 2 millionths of an inch across. More than 50,000 of them could fit on the head of a pin. But the researchers say there are more than mere nanosculptures. The software could allow researchers to create tiny containers to deliver drugs or molds for casting metals, nanoparticles with specific shapes for solar cells, medical imaging, and applications. To most people, DNA is the blueprint of life, the genetic instructions for all living things, from penguins to popular trees. But the team, like Reef and Yan, DNA is more than a carrier of genetic information and a source of construction material. There are 4 letters or bases in the genetic code of DNA, which pair up with a predictable way of our cells to form the rungs of a DNA ladder. And these strict base pairing properties of DNA, A with T and C with G, and the researchers have opted. By designing DNA strands with specific sequences, they can program the strands to repeat themselves together into different shapes. The method involves folding one or few long pieces of single-stranded DNA, thousands of bases long, with help from a few hundred short DNA strands that bind to complementary sequences on long strands and staple them into place. Researchers have been experimenting with DNA and construction material since the 1980s. The first 3D shapes were simple cubes, pyramids, soccer balls, geometric shapes with coarse and blocky surfaces. But designing structures with curved surfaces more akin to those found in nature has been tricky. The team's aim is to expand the range of shapes that are possible with this method. To do that, Fu developed software called DNA Axis. The software relies on a way to build the DNA described in 2011 by Yan, who was postdoc with Reef at Duke 20 years ago before joining the faculty at Arizona State. It works by coiling a long DNA double helix into concentric rings that stack on each other to form the contours of the object, like using coils of clay to make a pot to make the structures longer and stronger. The team also made it possible to reinforce them with additional layers for increased stability. Fu shows off a variety of forms that can make cones, guards, clover-shaped leaves. DNA Axis is the first software tool to let users design such shapes automatically using algorithms to determine where to place the short DNA staples to join the longer DNA rings together and hold the shape in place. If there are too few or if they're in the wrong position, the structure won't form correctly. Before our software, the curvature of the shape made this an especially difficult problem. Given a model of the mushroom shape, for example, the computer spits out a list of DNA strands that would self-assemble into the right configuration. Once the strands are synthesized and mixed into a test tube, the rest takes care of itself by heating and cooling the DNA structure. Within as little as 12 hours, it's sort of magically folding up into the DNA nanostructure. Practical applications of their DNA software in the lab or clinic may still be years away, but the researchers said it's a big step forward in terms of automated design of novel three-dimensional structures. So what I read from this is that nanotechnology is about to get even stronger, and there is a secondary proof. Now, this is another article about the same exact thing. Shrinking hydrogels in large nanofabrication objects. Researchers from Pittsburgh and Hong Kong print 3D and 2D patterns. Zhao's Biophotonics Lab develops novel techniques to study biological and pathological processes in cells and tissues through a process called expansion microscopy. The lab works to advance techniques to proportionally enlarge microscopic samples embedded in a hydrogel, allowing researchers to be able to view fine details without upgrading their microscopes. In 2019, an inspiring conversation with Shi-Chi Chen, who is visiting Carnegie Mellon as an invited speaker and as a professor in the Chinese University of Hong Kong's Department of Mechanical and Automation Engineering, sparked a collaboration between the two researchers. They thought they could use their combined expertise to find novel solutions for the long-standing challenge of microfabrication, developing ways to reduce the size of printable nano devices such as small as tens of nanometers or several atoms thick. Their solution is the opposite of expansion microscopy, creating the 3D pattern of material in a hydrogel and shrink it for nanoscale resolution. Shi-Chi is also known for inventing the ultra-fast two-photon lithology or lithography system. We met during his visit to Carnegie Mellon and decided to combine our techniques and expertise to pursue this radical idea. The results of the collaboration opens new doors for designing sophisticated nano devices and are published in the Science Journal. While conventional 3D nanoscale printers focus a laser pointer to serially process materials and take a long time to complete a design, Chen's invention changes the widths of the laser's pulse to form patterned light sheets, allowing the whole image containing hundreds of thousands of pixels to be printed at once without compromising axial resolution. The manufacturing technique is called Fem2 project, 2-photon lithography. The method is up to 1,000 times faster than previous nano printing technologies and techniques, and could lead to cost-effective large-scale nano printing for use in biotechnology, photonics, and nano devices. For the processes, researchers would direct the femtosecond 2-photon laser to modify the network structure and pore size of the hydrogel, which then creates boundaries for water dispersible materials. The hydrogel would then be immersed in water containing nanoparticle metals, alloys, diamond, molecular crystals, polymers, and or a fountain pen ink. Through fortuitous happenstance, the nanomaterials we tried were all attracted automatically to the printed hydrogel and assembled beautifully. As the gel shrinks and dehydrates, the material becomes even more packed densely and connect to each other. For examples, if a printed hydrogel is placed into a silver nanoparticle solution, the silver nanoparticles self-assemble to the gel along the laser pattern. As the gel dries out, it can shrink up to 13 sizes its original time, making the silver dense enough to form a nano silver wire and conduct electricity. Because the gels are three-dimensional, printed patterns can be what the fuck? Because the gels are three-dimensional, printed patterns can be as well. As a demonstration of the techniques used for encrypted optical storage, such as how CDs and DVDs are read with the laser, the team designed and built a 7-layer 3D nanostructure that read science after it was optically decrypted. Each layer contained a 200 by 200 pixel hologram of a letter. After shrinking, the sample of the entire structure appears to be a translucent rectangle under an optical microscope. One would need the right information on how to expand the sample and where to shine a light through to read the information. Based on our result, the technique can pack 5 petabits worth of information in a tiny cubic centimeter of space. That's roughly 2.5 times of all U.S. academic researchers' library combined. Zhao said that in the future, the researchers' goal is to build functional nano devices with multiple materials. In the end, we would like to use new technology to fabricate functional nano devices like nanocircuits, nanobiosensors, or even nanorobots for different applications. We are only limited by our imagination. In addition to Zen and Chow, co-authors on the science paper, 3D nanofabrication via ultra-fast laser patterning and kinetically regulated material assembly. So, just like the last article said, nanotechnology is about to skyrocket. Look, we already have nanotech in our fucking arms and our hips, wherever we took the shots and vaxes, but it's about to get a whole lot crazier. Crazy, kind of like this. Glass frogs hide red blood cells in liver to disappear. So, look at this. Glass frog photographed during sleep and while active using a flash, showing the difference in red cell blood perfusion within the circulatory system. Insane. So they're pulling all their red blood cells into their liver. Despite packing and unpacking red blood cells into a small space on a daily basis, the frogs don't experience potentially dangerous clotting, an exciting finding that opens the doors for biomedical research. There are more than 150 species of known glass frogs in the world, and yet we really just started to learn about some of the incredible ways they interact with their environment. Transparency is a common form of camouflage among aquatic animals, for example, ice fish and larvae, eels, but it's rare on land. For vertebrates, accomplishing transparency is difficult because their circulatory system is full of red blood cells that interact with light, yet glass frogs have found a way to mute this telltale. Native to the American tropics, glass frogs spend their days sleeping upside down on translucent leaves that match the color on their backs. Their undersides have translucent skin and muscles that allow their bones and organs to be visible, an adaptation that masks the frog's outlines on their leafy perches and makes them harder for predators to find. To investigate how they achieve the rare transparency, researchers use a technique called photoacoustic imaging at Duke University. And the method uses light to induce sound wave propagation from red blood cells, allowing the team to map the cell's location within sleeping frogs without using restraint, contrast agents, sacrifice, or surgery. The team found that resting glass frogs increased transparency two to threefold by removing nearly 90% of the red blood cells from circulation and sequestering them within the liver, which contains reflective guanine crystals that shield the cells from light. Holy shit. Hear that. So not only do they pull all the red blood cells inside of the liver, but the liver contains reflective guanine crystals that shield red blood cells from light. Interesting. Imagine what can be shielded from light in the sky. UFOs are doing some type of work. When the frogs become active again, they bring the red blood cells back into the blood. In most vertebrates, aggregating red blood cells can lead to potentially dangerous blood clots in veins and arteries, but glass frogs don't experience clotting, which raises significant questions for biological and medical researchers. This is the first time a series of studies documenting the physiological vertebrate transparency and will hopefully stimulate biomedical work to translate these frogs' extreme physiology into novel targets for human health and medicine. So, what I can see from this is that the way that we understand um our our own systems and using what humans bodies do, okay, so I actually know that NASA had morphed the DNA of a tardigrade and spliced it into the NASA employees in order to help them be stable with space, because tardigrades are literally like unkillable through heat and cold, so you can't really kill it by heat or cold. So they're trying to make NASA's people like pretty much temperature resistant. Now I could go ahead and see that they would also try to make these dudes very translucent, maybe. No idea. This is interesting. I would imagine that they're gonna go ahead and try to use this information and DNA from these glass frogs to try to like do some type of chimera shit, like cross DNA with something. All right, guys. China scrapped the COVID-19 quarantine rules for incoming passengers today. So, um, you know, yeah, cool. So you guys can go out to China again if you guys want. I mean, you will still need to provide a negative test 48 hours before the departure and wear a mask, but you're not gonna need to stay 3 weeks in quarantine. And fucking, oh my god, I heard that was killing people. Like they would be horrible. You got to, oh my god, imagine. All right, guys, continuing forward. Precise solar observation fed millions in ancient Mexico. Actually, this is my last article. Aztec farming calendar accurately tracks seasons, leap years. Without calendars or clocks or modern tools, ancient Mexicans watched the sun to maintain a farming calendar that precisely tracks seasons and adjusted for leap years. Before the Spanish arrival in 1519, the basin of Mexico agriculture system fed a population that was extraordinarily large for the time. Whereas Seville, the largest urban center for Spain, had a population of fewer than 50,000, the basin, now known as Mexico City, was home to as many as 3 million people. That was so at least 3 million people 500 years ago. That's a lot of people. To feed so many people in a region with a dry spring and summer monsoons required advanced understanding of when seasonal variations and weather would arrive. Planting too early or too late could have proved disastrous. The failure of any calendar to adjust for leap year fluctuations could also lead to crop failure. Though colonial chroniclers documented the use of a calendar, it was not previously understood how the Mexica or Aztecs were able to achieve such accuracy. New UC Riverside research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences demonstrates how they did it. They used the mountains of the basin as a solar observatory, keeping track of the sunrise against the peaks of the Sierra Nevada mountains. We concluded that they must have stood at a single spot, looking eastwards from one day to another to tell the time of the year by watching the sunrise, said Ezekiel Ezgura, distinguished UCR professor of ecology who led the research. To find that spot, the researchers studied Mexican manuscripts. These ancient texts referred to Mount Toloc, which lies east of the basin. The researchers' team explored the highest mountains of the basin and temple of the mountain's summit. Using astronomical computer models, they confirmed that a long causeway structure at the temple aligns with the rising sun on February 24th, the first day of the Aztec new calendar. Our hypothesis is that they used the whole Valley of Mexico. Their working instrument was the basin itself. When the sun rose at the landmark point beyond the Sierras, they knew it was time to start planning. You know what, guys? I believe I already read this, but it is very good to know that our ancestors have been doing this for thousands of years, hundreds of years, whatever, keeping track of the sun and the ecosystem, the agricultural land and fruits. Though some may be familiar with the Aztec calendar, that is the incorrect name given to the sunstone, arguably the most famous work of Aztec sculpture used solely for ritual and ceremonial purposes. It did not have any practical use as a celestial observatory. Think of it as a monument, like Nelson's column in Trafalgar Square or Lincoln's Memorial in Washington, D.C. Learning about Aztec tools that did have practical use offers a lesson about the importance of using a variety of methods to solve questions about the natural world. The same goals can be achieved in different ways. It can be difficult to see that sometimes. We don't always need to rely on technology. The Aztecs were just as good or better as the Europeans at keeping time using their own methods. The Aztec observatory could also have been a more modern function, according to Ezgura. Comparing old images of the basin of Mexico to current ones show how the forest is slowly climbing up to Mount Toloc, likely as a result in increased temperature at lower elevation. In the 1940s, the tree line was below the summit. Now there are trees growing in the summit itself. What was an observatory for the ancients could also be an observatory for the 21st century to understand global climate changes. Hey guys, and that is all for today. You guys have a wonderful day. I love you guys. Remember, go ahead and hit my channel up on all platforms and use my coupon codes down below. You guys have a wonderful day. God bless. Be blessed and be high.
Meditating, analyzing everything I see, so I see new horizons. Took the acid, feeling blasted in my brain, so I've been sitting up inside it, thinking about the present and the future. I'm improving cause I am a trooper, never getting caught up in the loop. Got up out it cause I found the truth. Woke up to a beauty of the day, the sun is shining, so I'm finna stay. Sitting, soaking up all of the rays, till I feel it surging through my brain like some booger sugar. Did a lot of cane, experimented with it, couldn't name all the times I did it, feeling like a fade. Yeah, I'm really glad that I let it go, cause I gotta be prepped for the time when the plane ride is a new norm. So I know I'm gonna stay high, blaze on the ganja, feeling like I make my music go to another level while I take off. I can't ever stop this, fell in love with it, fit like a glove, so I'm never ever done with it. So now I'm about to rip another beat, ayy. One day I'll make a million in a week, yeah, shooting for the top spot. Feel like I'm a hot shot, like I really got a chance with it. I will not flop, somebody gonna make a dance when I pop off. Gonna have all the bitches taking all the tops off. I've been feeling like I'm really gonna kill it for the rest of my life, so I've been staying focused. In my soul, I've been feeling like $1 million, so I know that everything is really getting closer. Yeah, no posers, only been hanging with the ones I've chosen. Only all the people that are living in the right way, cause they spending every day growing. Yeah, no whole shit coming in my life and then leaving in a moment. That's the shit I'll never let into my life again. Cause lately I've been feeling like I'm golden. Never showboat, I just showcase on my music that I made this far. Always knew that I could be the one that would get this far. Now I'm right here looking in my mirror, trying to figure out if there's any more fear. Cause I'm getting rid of it all, yeah, I'm getting rid of it all. Meditating, analyzing everything I see, so I see new horizons. Took the acid, feeling blasted in my brain, so I've been sitting up inside it, thinking about the